Back again for another Rehab review, where I am rehabilitating my addiction to bad toys with some of my favorites. And yes, I have heard your pleas. Ever since I did Hercules, everyone has wanted to see more Mugenbine, and here you go in two of my favorites, Junk Stag and Iron Beetle. Now, the problem with reviewing Mugenbine is the big value in them is having more than one and doing whatever your imagination allows you to do with them. And even then, I wouldn't know what to do on camera. So instead, we're going to be focusing on a pair with some pre-built features that are meant just for the two of them, and we're going to get a glimpse of just how far Mugenbine can go. So, with no further ado, we're going to start with Iron Beetle, which is kind of special to me because it was given to me by a friend of mine who got into Mugenbine right along with me, when he could find the toy and I had absolutely no idea of how to get my hands on one. So I thank him very much for that if he's watching. Most likely he's not. For some reason he doesn't watch my reviews. Anyway, here we have Iron Beetle in his vehicle mode, and it is quite the unique one. It is some form of VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, but it is very, very sci-fi in that regard. I'm not even sure that's a proper identification, but we're going to go with it. I only name it that because of these huge fans on the side that act as its wings and obvious form of lift. That you can see right around here, the fans accented by silver, which looks very nice on both sides. Little Mugenbine logos. Yes, these things are stickered. In case you haven't noticed, Mugenbine is very old school in its designs, very blocky, and still rocking the stickers. We've got a lot of really nice details in here that really I wouldn't have expected, but it's a nice little appreciative touch. You've got vents along the side of the cockpit here, very obvious cockpit, even the lights, which I'm not sure would come in handy. It's a robot, I'm not sure why I would need them. Look on the underside here, and I really like this detail. You can see there the molding on the underside of those wings also has this massive fan shape, and they can rotate if you want, but not very well because it's all ratcheted, and you'll see why later on. Really like the tail fins. I mean, you can do pretty much whatever you want with them. If you can want them down like this and make them a little bit more horizontal, I prefer them up like this, just to give them a little bit more flavor. Pop that back on. The other thing I like are these huge thrusters in here. This definitely is where the VTOL part kind of goes away, especially these silver accented thrusters in the back. You can kind of see how this figure comes together. I mean, right here, there's the Mugenroid, all balled up and all the parts slapped onto it. Holds pretty balanced on its own. Oh, and I should mention that if you're going to refer to this as a VTOL, you can angle the engines so that you can get a little bit of functionality out of it. Now, that's pretty much basic vehicle mode, and that's pretty standard for an older Mugenbine. So, we transform.
Cast off.
Briefly showing you the disassembled version of the toy now, you can see you've got 7 bind parts to work with. The wings, the tail, the cockpit, and the engines all become components for whatever figure you want to build out of your Mugenbine. You've also got your standard Mugenroid, the standard 6 points of articulation. If you've seen one of these, you've seen them all. For those who have never seen one of these, you get your basic upward shoulder articulation. That's pretty much it for there. You've also got basic knees and hips. Hips do go outward, so you can get a couple little poses out of him, but for the most part he's a very simple robot, and he's meant for functionality rather than personal style. Though you do get a little bit of that in the head. Each Mugenroid does have a unique head sculpt, and in these older series you can see a letter painted on the side. I for Iron Beetle. It was kind of a theme, and if I review more of these you will notice it yourself. but this is pretty standard, so let's go on to the final mode.
Change Beetle.
Now in the primary form, you can see where a lot of those vehicle mode components were going into. And just in case you didn't notice, here we go. We got the shell made up of those VTOL wings. You've got the tail fins making up a very convincing Kabuto Beetle head with the eyes and the big Hercules-style horn up here. Also, the engines have become the legs with the individually painted and molded in legs, which I thought was a great little touch because you can't even tell in the vehicle mode. Oh, and the cockpit became his butt. Yeah, go figure. But overall, it makes a very nice, big, vibrant red Beetle. I love the detailing on this thing with the dark gray here and a lot of gold accents. It really sets off the red really well. It is very, very nice figure. Definitely looks beefy, definitely looks my blend of robotic. I really, really dig it. Once again, the Mugenbine is obvious. But you know what? That's fine. That's the whole point. The whole point is imagination, and this, I think, really does a good job of going from something... Two things that are completely unrelated from each other. It makes for a very fun little toy. But on its own, of course, it doesn't do a whole lot. You've got some rolling, which kind of surprised me that this thing would roll as well as it does with little plastic caster wheels. And you've got a lot of little exposed pegs here for combining with anything else you want. But this has a partner figure, and it has specific functions for said partner. So we move on to Junk Stag. This one, quite a different beast altogether. Even though they both form beetles, you can definitely tell this one is definitely not the sleek little vehicle that we once saw out of Iron Beetle. Look at this. I mean, it's some kind of earth mover, trash shover, as the name suggests. It's a big bulldozer. And I think that's one of the reasons why this one wasn't nearly as popular as Iron Beetle. It's very hard to find Iron Beetle. Junk Stag, when I was first getting into Mugenbine, very easy to find. I think this vehicle mode turned off a lot of people, and I tend to agree to a point. While it definitely doesn't look as nice or compact as some of the other ones do, especially looking at it from the wrong angle, I think it does a fairly nice job. I mean, it does have some functionality to it. You can lift up this little scoop here in the front. You can adjust it a little bit with the joints. But overall, it's not as effective as a design as Iron Beetle was. So I can kind of understand. Also, its parts aren't quite as appealing to use in other vehicles. As you can see, it takes 2 parts to come up with a cockpit, 3 parts for this shovel, and even though there are some interesting bind parts here, it's not really anything that you might use regularly like the fins and wings on Iron Beetle. But it still stands as a pretty solid toy. I do like its design. Big, bold silver scoop. I like this dull blue that really makes it scream out, okay, I'm here to do my job and get it over with. What the hell do you want me to shove around now kind of vibe. He's a heavy worker, and I respect that. He's blue collar. Awesome. So I actually like the figure a little bit more than your average toy buyer. So let's... just spinning. I'm just wasting time now. Let's get him stripped down.
Cast off.
Junk Stag is also packing 7 different bind parts of his own. However, his are a little bit more limited than Iron Beetle's, as I said. This piece, for instance, not a whole lot to really do with, though you do get some very nice wheels out of this, which is very useful. Anytime you need a flat plate, you've got one that works pretty well. And these actually make some pretty nice arm or hand weapons. So you've got a few options. Also, something that they started doing with these figures is including spare robot heads, because the whole idea and the most popular thing to do is come up with robots as big and epic as you can build them. As for the Mugenroid, you can see dark gray and blue, your primary colors here. And a little interesting head. I kind of like this head better than I do for Iron Beetle. It's got the J on there, so you can tell who it is, naturally. It's pretty interesting all around. But of course, his namesake is a Stag Beetle, so we need to take a look at that.
Change Stag Beetle.
On to Stag Beetle mode, his far superior one in my opinion. Here, once again, we get to show off a lot of details obscured by the vehicle mode. When combining parts, for instance, you've come up with the mandibles in his face as well as the very obvious eyes for the Beetle, which I think was very nicely hidden in the original mode. At the same time, once again, the wheels have become the legs. You can see all the silver painted around them to make them stand out. So you've got the full insect going on here. The scoop has become the shell. So you've got a lot of connectivity going on here. A lot of really good use of the parts. Oh, like I said, even he doesn't know what to do with his own cockpit. That can be a bit of a hindrance, as can the exposed robot mode head, but it's hard to make out. Just keep it pressed up, and it should look enough like a mandible. Speaking of, these do open and close, so you can get a little bit of action out of him in this mode. He does not roll around, so you get exactly what you see. It's a nice looking form. It's nice and intimidating. A little bit more limited. You can see why this was the lesser of the two Beetle Mugenbine. But like I said, these two are a pair. They have very special features and connectivity that only they can pull off together. So we shall now see why they are so damn cool. By now, I'm sure more than one of you has noticed the similarity to Kamen Rider Kabuto between these two. The Beetle designs and the colors specifically. Believe it or not, this set came out a full year and a half before Kamen Rider Kabuto debuted, so if anything was inspired by one, it was the Rider series. Though I doubt that's the case. It might just be a happy little coincidence, or the designers just deciding those colors looked really nice on those particular Beetles. Either way, this is kind of compounded when you realize that the final name, the name of this combined robot, is Mugen Zector Double. Yes, his name is Zector. Go figure. But you can see why these two were paired up. They were specifically designed to combine together, and they combine very well. You can see the matching colors on both Mugenroids have formed very nice solid torso and internal pieces for him. You can also see the horns become very solid weapons with this massive capturing claw and bashing horn to beat evil into evil paste stuff. I need to think that out a little bit better. You can see they finally found something to do with the cockpit, though. It does make a very nice torso on him, and he has just the right amount of bulk to look very nice and powerful. You've also got the legs made up of, well, conveniently enough, the pieces that make up all the insect legs on both of the individual figures. So this actually comes out to be a very nice, very solid combination. Very cool looking too. I especially like the head with the combination of both the Kabuto and Stag horns, leading up to a very, very solid looking robot mode. It's just very nice altogether, and it's just a small example of what you can do when you've got more than one Mugenbine to work with. These two are specifically meant to work together. There's also sets of 3, and older figures can go as high as even 7 figures for an official combination. It all depends on what you have and how much you are willing to do with it. The limit is your imagination. This is just a minor demonstration to inspire you. With that being said, that is my Mugenbine review. And on that note, I would like to mention during this review, my junk stag has decided to go to junk on me. I've got little tiny plastic parts that have been falling off from his joints. He's lost one of his pegs, as you've probably noticed. That's all in the course of digging him out for this review, so this is the last ride for my junk stag, and at the very least I am glad he held up long enough to show you why I love Mugenbine so much, and so I can share him all with you. So hopefully this has inspired you to venture out and try the other beautiful toy robots out of Japan. So for me, Mugenbine, the riders, and my junk stag, I bid you all farewell.